Baruchim Abayim, and welcome to Torah Talks Chazaq's Tuesday night program with special guests. Tonight we have with us a very special guest, a very dear friend of Chazaq, Rabbi David Shelby. Shlita Baruch Haba. Welcome, Rabbi. How you doing?
Terrific. It's an honor to be here.
Honor all of us.
Thank you for having me.
Baruchim Abayim, welcome.
Lucky me.
All the way from Flatbush.
Yes. Well, for someone to come to Chazaq, they'll come all the way from the other end of the world. Bravo, what you do here.
Thank you very much. Yagdid Torah Yadir, just the beginning. And tonight we're going to be speaking about Maran, our Ovadia Yosef Zechet Tzadiv V'Kedosh Bracha. His Yartzeit, his Askara, his Yula is coming up. And we're going to, Bez Hashem, hear about the Rabbi's connection with the Rav and some stories and some chizuk. But before we get to that topic, a little bit of background about the Rabbi.
Bezat Hashem.
Appreciate it, yes.
So I grew up in the Syrian community in Brooklyn, New York. And Chacham Ovadia used to visit us. And from being a little kid, we used to love him and we used to see him. And my father used to take us to Eretz Yisrael when we were kids, before it was in style. Today it's in style to go to Israel, but back then it was not in style. And he would take us and we would pray with Chacham Ovadia, etc., and get berachot, and we loved him from a young age. Then we would come back. I went to school there and everything. And then when I got older, I learned in Eretz Yisrael when I finished high school. Every single Motzei Shabbat, we would go to Chacham Ovadia's class. And you have 2,000 people in one building where the rabbi used to give his class. Then it went on, before internet was invented, they made a satellite, and it was all over the world, 100,000 people watching the rabbi's class. So because there were so many people, Ovadia, when he sat to give a class, instead of facing straight, he would turn a little, because there was a Sefer Torah behind him, a Hechal, an Aron Kodesh, and he didn't want to put his back to the Hechal, so he turned like this. We used to go an hour or two early to his class just to get the seats right here, because there's 2,000 people watching, but he would look right there, and we would go there every single Motzei Shabbat, and that's when we started getting close to him, Baruch Hashem. Then I was lucky, came back here, I got married, and I moved to Eretz Yisrael, and Hashem was good to me. I lived right next door to the rabbi, literally, for 9 years. God bless my wife. It wasn't easy for a girl from Brooklyn, New York, to go to live in Eretz Yisrael. You know, sometimes people say they go to the hotels, they're in the presidential suite. They say, I could live here forever in a presidential suite. Anyone can live forever. But when it's roughing it in Eretz Yisrael from someone from America, that's not so easy. And I was lucky to learn in his kollel, and I became literally a son of the rabbi, an adopted son of Ben Bayit, as they say. And after about 9 years, that's when he told us to move back to America.
Wow.
And I begged him for 1 more year, and he said, it's time to go back to your community to teach. The rabbi always said, Lilmod al menad lilamed. To teach in order to learn, to teach others. Yes. And I begged him 1 more year, and he said no, but Baruch Hashem, in his humility and his greatness, he made my wife and myself and my family a going away party. They made a huge Seudat Pereda, and the rabbi spoke, and it happens to be the same reason why we just had Shemini Atzeret. Hashem says, Kashe alai predatchem. The rabbi said the same thing about us, and Baruch Hashem, I came back here and I started teaching. And even though I moved back here, but I would go every few months. I was with the rabbi's family all the time, talking on the phone, but I would go every few months to spend the Shabbat together with the rabbi, and then come back here and give over stories. All I did in my classes was talk about the rabbi. There's millions of stories. And when I would talk to people, they would say, could you take us? And then we started making trips to Eretz Yisrael and going and bringing them, and they started loving the rabbi. They were donating his sefarim, and they just wanted to be a part of it. And we kept making trips, believe it or not, every few months to go to the rabbi. And we would get there, we would land about 5, 6 o'clock, go to the hotel, shower. By the time we got to the rabbi's house, it was 12 at night, midnight or 1. We would go into his house at that time of the night. You would think the house is sleeping. The rabbi was learning with more koach, even up to his 90s, learning, and we never disturbed him. The boys would be taking pictures and FaceTiming and showing the kids, this is the rabbi, and the rabbi had no idea we were there. Wow. And then all of a sudden he would pick up a book or something, and he would look up and he says, hey, what are you doing here? And then, of course, he stopped everything because he loved us all. All he wanted to do was give chizuk, just like Chazaq does. Bravo.
I actually had a similar story. I had this chut to meet the Rav, and the Gabaim, the helpers, told me, go in. And I go in, and I tell them that I don't see the Rav. They start laughing. I'm like, what's so funny? They like go around. There were so many Sfarim in front of the rabbi that I didn't recognize. I was also very nervous and young.
Yes.
But put myself to the side, there were prime ministers and presidents that would come to the Rav.
I'm an eyewitness.
And the Rav was in the middle of learning.
I'm an eyewitness. I saw that many times with my own eyes.
Unbelievable.
Correct.
So there's, as you said, there's so many stories about Rav Ovadia Yosef.
There's millions of stories. Millions
but
of stories.
If the rabbi has maybe one story that sticks out of all the stories out there, what would it be? I know it's very difficult to choose.
Correct. There's literally, like we said, there's even stories happening after he passed away. And if they weren't documented by real rabbis, and Chacham Moshe Yosef verified a story, how even nowadays people are having miracles from the rabbi, which you wouldn't believe. And if you would talk about miracles with Ovadia, he would say impossible. He didn't like, he wasn't so big on mysticism. But because he cared for Am Yisrael so much, that they say greater are the tzaddikim in the next world than in this world. And if he cared so much, I told the children in school today, we were talking about chesed because of Noah. He was on the teva, changing the world to be olam chesed yibaneh. I said, and is it a coincidence that this week is the passing of Chacham Ovadia? I said, even the housekeeper, she wasn't Jewish. And I just told the children this morning, I said, because she knew me, I would go there for Shabbatot all the time. And she knew I was, Baruch Hashem, part of the family. And her name was Maria. And when we went for the Shiv'ah, I saw her crying. We were all crying. But a housekeeper that's not Jewish is crying for Chacham Ovadia. And I asked her, Maria, why are you crying? Which point it hurts you the most that you're going to miss? She said, I'm here for a bunch of years. He was the busiest man or angel than anyone on the planet, literally. And his mind is on Torah, 40,000 sefarim on his mind. No one could fathom how his mind had so much Torah. I one time by mistake left the wrong book on his desk in the wrong spot. I used to bring my own sefarim to learn there, and one time I borrowed the rabbi's while I was there. I would be lucky to sit on the side, and just when he would be learning with his fire and everything, I would be learning on the side, and I forgot to put the book. I couldn't bring the book back into the house, so I put it on his desk. And then the next morning when I said I have to return that book, it was filled with notes the next day, because his mind has millions of compartments and he keeps filling up each compartment, and he says, when I get to that book, then I'll write the notes in it. And when he saw it, he said, hey, it's here, right? So she knew how busy he was. And you mentioned you saw sefarim on his desk. I'm not exaggerating. I one time got off the plane and got to his home and was watching him. He must have had 100 sefarim open at the same time. Now, he had a photographic memory and everything was intertwined perfectly. Some people might memorize a book and you ask them how many times does it talk about a certain subject, they would tell you, let me think for a second, and they have to go through the whole book in their mind and then count. He would tell you on the spot, just like there's stories how he beat the computer many times. So his mind was busy, his sefarim. She knew how much he cared for Am Yisrael. And 24/7 people coming in, crying, begging, appointments. And she saw this. And she tells me, you know what I'm going to miss the most? He never ever sat down without making sure, never sat down to eat without making sure that I had food as well. A non-Jewish woman, how much did he care? So someone who cares that much in this world, obviously he's going to care even more. If the Gemara says, Gedolim, they're greater in the next world even more than here, right? Imagine that. You know, there's a saying, Tov sheberofim the Gehenam. So our rabbis explain, what does that mean? Right? That they're going to Gehenam. Some people are so good, they heal other people, not only physically, mentally, emotionally, and they even go in the next world to save them out of Gehenam, not only in this world. So obviously, the rabbi is going to do that. And you hear stories where there was a widow thrown out of her home, unfortunately, and one night she had to sleep in the park. And the next morning, 5, 6 in the morning, a wealthy man from the community comes running into the park, screaming, "Where are you?" And she didn't know he was referring to her. And she says, "Are you talking to me?" And he says, "Yes." He says, "I promise you, I'm going to take care of you. You're never going to have to worry again. We're buying you a house. You're never going to have to sleep under these circumstances." How she got to those circumstances is a long story. But he said, "You're never going to have to worry again." And she said, "How'd you know I was here? And who are you?" He says, "Doesn't matter. You're not going to believe it anyway." She says, "Tell me." And he said, Chacham Ovadia came to me in a dream. And he said, you go to the park, there's a woman there that's a widow, and you help her, right? And is it a coincidence that the guy came to the park? Obviously, it's a true story. And Chacham Moshe Yosef verified it from A to Z, and he let them put it in the Sefer. He says, I know it's 100% true. So even though he's not with us, his legacy obviously lives on. We miss him like crazy. Everybody has a hole in their heart without Chacham Ovadia in the world. Some people have trouble even watching his classes so many years later because they miss him. But the Sefarim and the Torah that's out there, Baruch Hashem, from the Rabbi, it's literally a Mayan HaMitkaber, and also, of course, the Chesed. So that was the story that I mentioned to the children today. We have to share it with the world. 100%. And there's millions of stories, literally, about caring about Torah. Every single subject in the world, there's thousands of stories with the Rabbi. And he was one man. Could we even call him a man? But he changed the entire world from being a little boy with no money, right? He almost worked in the grocery store. It's a famous story. Yes. And Chacham Ezrati has said, better I work than he work. Let him go. And he changed the world. Rabbi Yitzhak Yosef should live and be well. Right? He's continuing his father's legacy. But when he was a little boy, his father took him to Ashkenaz Asifot, stadiums with all Ashkenaz, which is beautiful, Kol Yisrael Achim, but they were talking in Yiddish. Ovadia maybe knew 2 words in Yiddish, till he started saying the word glat. That's Yiddish, right? He always said halak bet Yosef, but people, even parv, he used to say not meat, not dairy. People are like, huh? Then he started saying a couple, so he has no idea what the words are. As a matter of fact, there's a couple of teshuvot that the rabbi writes in Yabia Omer. And I once told the rabbi, believe it or not, we know Hashem, just in Parashat Bereshit, Hashem created the world. So Hashem, the Zohar says, looked into the Torah and he created the world. Histakel ba'oraita ubara alma. Right? God looked into the Torah and created the world. Chacham Ovadia Sefarim, Yabia Omer. It's an entire world, a millionfold in a set of Sefarim. And I once told the rabbi as a compliment, Histakel bi'abia omer ubara alma. Usually, in the old days, he would say, no, don't say that. And he liked the compliment, and he said, thank you so much, right? I'm not worthy, but he thanked me. So in Yabia Omer, he quotes the Noda Bihuda, She'elot v'teshuvot, right, from Rabbi Haskell Landau. And in the Teshuvah, the question was in Yiddish, but the answer was in Lashon Kodesh. So Ovadia writes in Yabia Omer, he says, I don't understand how to read the question, but from the answer, obviously you could tell what the question was, right? So his son Hamitzhak Yosef asks him, Dad, why are we coming to these stadiums? It's beautiful, right? With everyone together, but we have no idea what we're talking about. And he was a little kid, and he says, you know why? Because watch and see, we're going to have this for Sephardic jewelry as well. And I want you to see as a child, you're going to be a witness that we came here and we're going to do the same. And of course, boy, did he, maybe Mahzir Atara Liyoshna, with everything he did. He never ever relaxed in his life. He always worried about the people, no matter who it is. People that had no life, people who have mental problems, whatever it might be, he worried about them no matter what. As a matter of fact, I'm sorry, you might have another question, but once I start with the rabbi, that's it. I hope there's enough room on the video, but we just had September 11th commemoration. Hashem shall watch us all. And I was with the rabbi when it happened.
Oh, wow.
For 2 weeks after 9/11, he was crying like a baby every single day. And he made me call America every day to find a story of how people got saved, because he couldn't function knowing that such a tragedy happened. And I went into his house to get a beracha. I think it was Erev Rosh Hashanah, right after 9/11. And it was just the rabbi learning, and Baruch Hashem, I was lucky to go in. And I go in and I got a beracha, and I spoke to the rabbi, and he thought I left. And he didn't know I was still there. And he starts talking to Hashem. He says, Hashem, please, we need the Mashiach. Look what's happening in the world. How could bad people do such terrible things to such good people? He was talking a regular conversation with Borei Olam. Right? So, exactly.
What a big loss for Klal Yisrael.
Exactly.
I'll tell you an interesting story recently. I actually had a plumber come to my house, and he saw a picture of Ovadia. And he's like, Ovadia? I'm like, yeah, of course. He's like, let me tell you a story. I'm like, sure, stories are great. He's like, I used to be the delivery of the cleaners of his glima.
Beautiful.
And he's like, I would always want to get a barcha blessing.
Beautiful.
And they would say, no, this week, that. It was pushed off. And he said one time, listen, I really need a bracha for a child. Many years passed, unfortunately, he didn't have a child. He said, then he got a bracha from Ovadia. 9 months later, he had a baby boy.
Wow.
Mamash Visi, I just got this story.
Beautiful.
The stories that you said are endless. The amount of chizuk and inspiration.
And from one human being.
Unbelievable.
Yes.
So everybody knows of Ovadia, like the Rabbi mentioned, wrote many Sfarim. And Baruch Hashem, we all know his kids. Baruch Hashem, the children are continuing his legacy. Chacham David has been here many times. Chacham Yitzchak and the sons and everyone. Baruch Hashem, Yishtabach Shmolad. But one thing people don't realize sometimes is his zikui harabim. He's going out to the public and inspiring the masses. You touched on it a little bit.
Correct.
If you could add a little bit to that and the Rav's legacy.
Every single Elul, the entire 30 days before Rosh Hashanah, Chacham Ovadia was never home at night. He used to say, are we going to go into a day of judgment and worrying about ourselves when our brothers are out there and our sisters who need chizuk? Even after he was 90, for decades and decades and decades, he would go to one city at one night, another city. He would say selichot with them. He would give them a divrei Torah inspiration. Thousands of people all over Eretz Yisrael. He would go sometimes 2 cities a night. He would go by helicopter, by car, no matter what it was, he would go. And he today, it's in style to make people religious. Yeah, he goes, he takes boys who went off the D and he's bringing them back, and it's beautiful. Bravo to everyone. However, 1,000,000 years ago, it wasn't really the style. And Chacham Ovadia used to do it, walk from place, and he didn't get money from it, and he didn't get any honor. He was poor for many, many years. And one of the smartest young children back then who knew good merchandise, he should live and be well, Rabbi Reuven Elbaz, Rosh Yeshiva of Or Hayim. He was a little kid, and for some reason, he started following Chacham Ovadia every Shabbat from one shul to another shul, seeing the rabbi making people religious, hugging them, caring about them. And Rabbi Elbaz said, if the most important thing in the world to Chacham Ovadia is Torah, but if he's taking off hundreds of hours a month just to help the people, obviously helping the people is so important. And Rabbi Elbaz has thousands and thousands of soldiers and people that he made religious, all because he was a smart kid and he saw true merchandise. He followed Chacham Ovadia around. Chacham Ovadia writes in his book on family purity, and he was never ever boastful. He was always humble, obviously. I went to stadiums with the rabbi, hundreds of thousands of people screaming and singing Yamima Yemei Melech Tosif, right? It's a song that they sing for Gidolim, etc. And he would whisper under his mouth, I am nothing but dust, Anochi Afar Va'efer. But sometimes he had to let the cat out of the bag, as they say. He had to show some things. There were people who thought that he was disrespectful to the Ben Ish Chai. And I said, he loved the Ben Ish Chai more than anyone would ever love anybody. He read a Sepharim, and the Ben Ish Chai came to him in a dream. And we don't want to get too mystical. A dream, not a dream, whatever it was, let's just say a dream. And Ovadia is in his study. And like we said, his desk was like Har Sinai with all Sepharim, even though he memorized all of them, but he never wrote and quoted a Sefer till he saw it again with his own eyes. So all of a sudden he's writing and he picks up his head and he sees the Ben Ish Chai in front of him opposite his desk. He stands up and he starts kissing the Ben Ish Chai's hand, and he says, Rabbi, he was embarrassed, like the Ben Ish Chai is here. And the Ben Ish Chai was looking at one of Chacham Ovadia's Sefarim. And the Ben Ish Chai tells Chacham Ovadia, you have no idea how much Hashem loves your Sefarim. Imagine. And Ovadia was humbled, and he says, I wish I could sit down and write more Sefarim instead of going around. And he looks at him and he says, as much as he likes your Sefarim and the Torah, he loves when you go and you bring back the people. Together also, he mentioned in the dream on Rabbi Yehuda Tzadka, right? Chacham Ovadia's good friend, his son Rabbi Moshe, he should live and be well, Be'ezrat Hashem. So the rabbi went all over. I remember I was lucky also, thank you Hashem, maybe I knew you guys, so that's why the rabbi would let me in. But every morning I would go into the rabbi's house 40 minutes to an hour before prayers, before anyone was there. And I would watch him, and I would look at his desk. There's even mystical stories. There was no cameras back then on the phones, and we didn't have cameras so if I saw something very interesting on his desk, there was a photocopy machine there, the old-fashioned ones. I would photocopy something, and I have a whole loose leaf in my home of all the special things that I found. One day I found something, I don't know how, what, when, and where. It was a kamea, an amulet, silver sheet of real silver with names of angels etched out on both sides. And I saw this, and I never saw that before. And yours truly took it and went to the photocopy machine, and I copied both sides. And I put the papers in my loose leaf. I remember putting it in there. We moved to the United States, and I put all my stuff. I have a little shrine, a little museum, Baruch Hashem. And when I looked through that thing a bunch of years ago, through my loose leaf, those 2 pages were missing.
Oh, wow.
I don't know why, what. The rabbi didn't want me to have it, whatever, coincidence, take it as you wish. But anyway, so I was lucky to go in the mornings. One night, he went to 2 cities with, unfortunately, Rabbi Shalom Cohen just passed away. His memory should be a blessing for us. And he was 10 years younger than the rabbi, to say the least. And, he was robust, Rabbi Shalom Cohen. And Rabbi Shalom Cohen, he said, I heard it with my own ears. He said, we went to 2 cities, silichot, speeches, right? It's late at night. He said, I didn't have energy to take one more step with my legs. That was Rabbi Shalom Cohen, who's 10 years younger than the rabbi.
Wow.
Ovadia says, but we didn't learn tonight. I didn't learn. You want me to go to sleep? I didn't learn Torah tonight. He taught 3 million people. He learns in the car when he drives. You think he just sits back and listens to music? He learned in the car. And he would learn in the helicopter when it took him. And still, he said, I didn't learn. He learned till 6 a.m. And I saw him. He didn't want to sleep in his bed because then it would be too hard for him to get out of bed for Shachari in 40 minutes or an hour. So what he do? He laid down on the couch, and I went to the couch right there. I was watching the rabbi take that cat nap before Shachari that morning. So when it came to Zikui Harabim, it was making caring about the Jewish people out there. Obviously, that was his forte, besides everything else that he did.
Unbelievable.
Yes.
Wow.
Baruch
Ovadia
Hashem.
Maran. So, Rabbi Shelby, I got to tell you, so much chizuk, so many gems, so much inspiration just from these stories for us to grow. Such a tzaddik, such a malach, such a holy rabbi, that we should always try to strive to be like our forefathers and tzaddikim. I wish this could go on forever because I'm just enjoying every second of it. But unfortunately, there's a timer on,
right.
And we have a minhag by Torah Talks, the custom of a final message. If there would be one final message. That the rabbi could share with our broad audience.
So like we said, there's a million messages we could learn from the rabbi. His merit should be a blessing for all of us. But some people out there, whatever it is they're doing, they focus on one item and they forget about the other important things. If they want to steig and become the greatest chacham, beautiful. And we're not talking about anyone we know, people far, far away. So they want to study 24/7. So when it comes to caring about people, they might not put as much energy into that like they should. I got to run to shiur. I got to take my Gemara and go. So, they might bump into someone even running to go to learn. And then you have people on the other side that they're doing chesed and they're caring, but maybe they're not learning Torah. And maybe they're not worried about things. One thing, right, out of the billion things that we could learn from the rabbi that I believe the world has to know, besides the caring and the learning and the love for Am Yisrael, is you can't lose focus on other things that are important as well while you're striving to be as great as you can be in every subject. So he strived for, it's like Kriyat Yam Suf, Am Yisrael, they walked through 12 aisles, it's split into, right, and the Jews were crossing all of them. He took all his traits and he went through every single trait, every aisle as good as he should be. No one ever got slighted by him, and he learned more than anyone, right? Even Ronald Reagan in the 80s, when he was lucky to meet Ovadia didn't want to insult him. He's the president of the United States, but Ovadia, I got to go learn. Right? So he kept looking at his watch. He cares about Torah, but he doesn't want to. And Ronald Reagan asked him, Rabbi, what are you looking at your watch? He says, forgive me, I have to go study. And he's like, why? You already know everything. He says, we'll never know everything, right? We have to keep going. So if there's one message we could tell the world is use all your strengths for every subject and don't minimize anything by focusing on other important things in life.
Amazing message, Rabbi David Shelby Shlita. What inspiration, what chizuk.
The inspiration I got, I thank you.
And I'm sure everyone enjoyed as much as I enjoyed this special edition of Torah Talks. Chazaq's Tuesday night program with special guests. We want to remind everyone at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every single Tuesday night, Chazaq Torah Talks with special guests. It's been a small break because of the Chagim, because of the holidays, but Baruch Hashem, we're back full force. Yagdid Torah V'Yadir, we want to thank our partners, everyone involved at the Chazaq organization, headed by Operation Manager Rabbi, who does so much for Klal Yisrael, for the Jewish people. We want to thank Torah Anytime for hosting this broadcast as well. We want to thank Daily Giving. $1 a day goes a very, very far away, and this episode is going to be dedicated as well, of course, the Aliyah Neshama of Maran, our Ovadia, but along with my grandfather, my mother's father, Malkiah ben Yosef's Yartzeit is also tonight, and you should be a Melech Yosha and all of Klal Yisrael and Neshama Shem Aliyah. And anyone that wants to dedicate or be involved or suggest speakers for the future Chazaq Torah Talks, please send an email to info@chazaq.org, info@chazaq.org. Share this link and podcast to all your family and friends. We should all be zochet to see the Geulah Shlema, the complete redemption. Come here, Rabbi, Chazaq Baruch.